Welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team. I'm Yetta Dekker.
And who am I?
Ken Dekker.
All right, I'm Ken Dekker today.
Yes, he has not changed, which is a really, well, actually, he has changed a whole lot over the last 34 years.
That's a long time to know somebody.
It certainly is. And yet he's still Ken Dekker. Well, if you're really cross with him, you can call him Kenneth Carl.
Ooh, but nobody gets cross with me because I'm such a nice guy.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, thanks for joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate. And today we're going to talk about inspections. What does an inspection cover? Why do we even want to have one? Just everything to do with, and we're going to talk specifically about a building inspection, recognizing that there are well inspections that you may want if you are on a country property. You will want, for sure, a septic inspection if you're buying a country property that has a septic system.
Why do we not do one? Because we were willing to take the $25,000 risk.
That's right. And so there will be times where you may decide that the value is such in a house that you're willing to forgo all inspections. We wouldn't necessarily ever advise you to do that. It is something we have chosen to do a few times, and it has worked out fine. If you're willing to take the risk and put your offer in accordingly, then maybe it works. So anyway, we're going to advise that everybody do building inspections, and generally we do too.
Yes.
Thank you. So, the things that primarily you're looking for in a building inspection are major or minor in magnitude.
Yeah, usually you're looking for the major stuff.
Right.
And along the way, the inspector's going to find some minor stuff. Right. There are no perfect homes.
No.
I've discovered that.
None.
They all
None.
have problems. Even brand new homes have the odd little thing.
That's right. And so the purpose of a building inspector is not necessarily to find that one plug that is miswired, or, I mean, they may find it, and yet they don't generally go through and do every plug in the house. Not a bad idea to bring your own little tool and do that. It's just generally the scope of the inspection is more of a general inspection, looking for the major significant issues as well as safety issues, which is something they want to look for, as well as environmental.
Now, it's also important to know that if you have a great realtor that's got experience with houses and has been through a ton of home inspections.
Like thousands?
Yeah. What's going to happen is, just as they're showing you a property, at least this is what I do, and I think our whole team does.
What do you mean you think?
I know our whole team does.
Thank you.
When we're walking through a property, we have a critical eye, and we're looking for, are the shingles done, or is there, 3 or 4 or 5 years left in them, or are they brand new? We're looking for windows. We're looking, we'll probably generally look at, if something's interested in the property, we'll take a quick peek at the furnace, see how old it is, things of that nature, because we know some of the major cost factors in a house, and if they're all up to date, well, then we're kind of golden.
Right, and we'll also be looking at foundation. Is there any excessive moisture? Is there effervescence coming out of the concrete? Is there any
cracks?
Major cracks? Are the window panes already blown? Like, are the seals blown in the windows? Is there wood rot in the windows of the garage doors?
So we're not really doing an inspection, but we're doing a little bit of a pre-check.
Right.
Because what we don't want is surprises at the inspection time, because as a buyer, you get your heart set on a house, you negotiate for the purchase of it, and then, after that, then you spend hundreds of dollars on an inspection, usually about $500. And it's a real letdown if the inspector says, yes, the shingles are done, the windows are blown, and the furnace needs replacing, and your realtor didn't tell you any of that.
Right.
Because then it's a big surprise. But if the realtor's already said, the roof needs doing, expect to do that in the next year or two, and then when the home inspector echoes that, it's not a surprise, so you're not having to go back, renegotiate, because you already negotiated the price, knowing relatively the condition of the house.
Right, so the ideal is to put your offer in based on as much knowledge as we can gather about the house, so that we're looking at it through, as Ken said, a critical eye. Through a critical lens.
Yeah.
That's not rose-colored glasses.
So now
what color are those?
Clear.
Okay, clear, crystal clear.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the inspector has specific training to look for defects that we don't have as realtors. And one of the things they're going to check is they're going to check the mechanicals.
Right.
And your mechanicals include your plumbing, your electrical, and your heating.
And your cooling.
And your cooling.
Right.
And basically they're going to run the system. So they're going to run water down the sink, then they're going to look underneath the sink with a flashlight, see if there's any dripping, make sure the water actually disappears, it's not stuck in the sink or the shower and that kind of thing. They're going to check pressure, they'll flush the toilet and turn on a shower and make sure that you still have water pressure and things of that nature. Electrical, they're going to open the panel on the electrical panel, make sure things aren't double tapped or
the
wrong size of wire or wrong size of breaker for the size of wire.
Or fuses. It could be fuses, and it'll also identify if your aluminum wiring has been pigtailed. You'll be able to see that.
Yeah, they'll have to do a little more checking in the actual plugs to make sure that that's been done, and whether it even has aluminum wiring or copper wiring.
Right.
Good questions that your insurance company is going to ask you as well.
Right.
Heating system, they're really going to take a peek at it, make sure the filters are clean. They're going to run it, make sure it either gives heat in the summer or cooling in the summer. And in the winter, they can't test the cooling because it'll damage the air conditioner, so they can only test the heating.
Right.
Yeah. Then they're going to move, well, they're not going to do it in this order. They always do it in a different order, but
because each inspector has their preference and their way. Some like to start on the outside and check for drainage and all those sorts of things because that's where they like to start.
So let's talk about the exterior.
And others like to start in the basement.
Since you started there.
Okay.
So what are they going to check on the exterior?
Well, the exterior, they're going to check for cracking in the foundation. Mm-hmm. They're going to check for areas that water penetration may be likely for a property. They're going to look for gutters and downspouts and even how attached they are and how straight they are and water flow out of those eavesdropping, whether there's trees growing in them, that kind of thing. Yeah, we've seen that a few times. And then they're going to also look for grading around the foundation. If we've got a downspout that is dumping right at the edge of a foundation and the grading is wrong, now we're in even more trouble because not only is too much water being pushed there, you're creating the probability of water penetration because every foundation has the potential to accept water.
Yeah.
Or to let water in.
Yeah,
so
your
really,
house is not a boat.
It is not a boat. It's a house. It's not a houseboat.
No. Keep the water away.
And so we want to keep the water away from the foundation. And that's the biggest, most important thing, really. And then you want to make sure that there aren't significant cracks and those kinds of things that are going to make it easy for water penetration. What else on the outside, Ken?
Well, you talked a lot about water.
I do.
Primarily, that's what the inspector is looking for.
Yeah.
Is the caulking sealed so water can't get in behind the sheeting? Is the siding intact so that water can't get through? Are the weep holes at the bottom of the brick open so that water can get out if any water goes through the brick? Are the shingles in good condition? Is the flashing in good condition? So that all these things are really about keeping water out of your house because water causes mildew, it causes rot, it causes mold, and it causes damage. So that's really what they're doing on the outside.
And they're also going to look at brick and how much spalding of the brick is happening, meaning how much of the face of the brick is disappearing from
and
water
what
penetration.
Caused that?
Water. It's all about water. Yeah. And they'll be looking at the mortar joints between brick to make sure that it's not missing, because again, that's going to create a water problem. And water is actually more damaging than just about anything. Fire and water are good competitors.
Yeah, and usually when you have a fire is they add water and then you got both damages.
Both, because water travels and you can't necessarily see it until it's a big problem. I mean, if you have an ice dam, the water comes in a roof spot and the damage happens 12 feet away because it travels along some point, some piece of wood or something, and it ends up, can't figure out why you've got water in your bedroom. But it really started at the leak by your kitchen.
Yeah, it could
or
be.
An ice dam. So water is just one of those things that we're really cautious about because you can't see what's underneath it. If you have rotted sills underneath the window that are hidden by, say, aluminum capping, you won't necessarily know it's rotten.
Right. So then the next thing they're going to look at is structure.
Right.
And structure really entails the walls, the floors. That's after you've done foundation, because usually foundation's done both inside and outside. They look at the foundation for cracks and water penetration. Foundation holds up the house, so it's very important. And then the structure is the house. So it's your walls, your flooring, your floor joists, your beams. Are the beams the right size? Do they have enough posts, teleposts? Did someone pull out a telepost to get rid of an impedance in a basement and now the beam is sinking? Or we're looking for the floors. Are they level or are they sloping? And if they're sloping, why are they sloping? Now, a lot of times in an older home, 100, 150 years old, they're sloping because the wood has bent over time with the weight of the structure, the way they were built in those days. That weight makes everything sink a little bit and the floors will slope. But in a modern home, you shouldn't have sloping. If you have sloping, it's because something shifted.
Well, and often, in fact, as much as Ken's saying we shouldn't have sloping, there's very few homes that don't have some sloping.
Yes.
And that could be because the main beam was either over-tightened or under-tightened. It could be some of the wood shrank, some of the wood didn't shrink, some of it was greener than the other wood. So it's very common to have some rooms, I mean, we have them in our house.
Yeah, slight slope. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a slight slope, and it's certainly not an uncommon thing to find. What the building inspector wants to discover, though, is it a structural issue?
Yeah.
Often in an upper hall, we'll almost see like a bow.
Yeah, and
we've seen lots of those.
Is it continuing to move, or is it settled once and it's
right.
done? That's a major concern, whether it's continuing to move. If it's continuing to move, now you've got an issue.
Now we need to do some more exploring, and it becomes a much bigger...
And you know what the good news is about a sloped floor?
I don't want to know.
Well, you never lose your marbles. You know where they are.
Yeah, in the corner.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Anyway, and then in the basement, when we're talking about floors and sloping there, the concrete in the basement floor is poured really like a biscuit after the home is built.
A biscuit?
Yeah, it's kind of like a biscuit. Think of the concrete floor as a big cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You break your
big
tooth on
concrete
that.
cookie. It generally does not sit underneath the foundation walls.
No.
It
Very
sits,
rarely is it slab construction.
Right. We do see the occasional slab construction house. However, the majority of homes in Ontario are built first the footings, the foundation, and then the structure of the house, and then they will pour the large concrete biscuit into the basement, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it is not absolutely level.
No, and it may crack.
And it will crack.
And it's
How
not
about we
structural.
say it will crack?
It will crack. There will be cracks in your basement floor, and it's not structural.
Generally speaking. Unless the ground is actually sinking away, and now at one side of the room or one side of the basement it's maybe 4 inches and you can see that the slab has fallen, there may not be proper compression underneath,
properly.
And therefore it may be doing that, and that could be an expense
pretty
you
rare
have
to
to
see
endure.
that.
We've seen it though.
Yes, we have.
So you want to look for that. However, it's very common for a basement floor to be very uneven.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's hard to put ceramic tile, actually, large ones down on a concrete floor.
Yeah, because they're not fully even.
Yeah, and they're not really, unless you can do a really good job of putting your concrete coat.
Well, it depends on who put it in, but a lot of times it's just done with a 2x4.
Yeah.
A big long 2x4, and they kind of run it back and forth across the cement and make it as level as possible.
Yeah, so that's not a major concern, but you do want to make sure that it is not a structural issue. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to move from those kinds of things to the interior.
Yeah, an interior, it's more, some of it's decorative, some of it's functional. It's like, do the cabinet doors work? Do the doors actually open and close properly, or do they bind?
What about the windows?
Windows up and down, or in and out.
Or
you check the
crank.
mechanism. Yeah, they make sure that they are working. Really, it's we've gone away from a lot of the major possibilities of problems now, and we're moving into the minor stuff. Although a door that maybe is binding at the top may indicate that something has shifted. So they'll be looking for cracks in the walls, in the drywall, because that would indicate a shift. Sometimes it's just swelling. We get too much moisture in our house and our doors swell, and then suddenly they don't close properly anymore. You got to shave a little bit off. It's not a big deal.
And that's not a problem.
No.
It could be, though, so you want to explore a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you want to look at cracks in ceilings in drywall. It's not uncommon to see some, and the larger the spans, even if you've got really deep floor trusses and trusses, you could have some cracking.
The more flex.
The more, because huge spaces allow for more opportunity for things to move, right?
Yeah, and we've been talking about home inspections on houses. If you just joined us, you're listening to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team, and we're discussing really what a typical home inspection would cover.
Right. And it's both a great show for sellers as well as buyers, because it's good from a seller's perspective to know what somebody's going to inspect, so you can address a lot of those small maintenance items, which we've talked about in other shows, and just not even have them come up, because every home is going to have deficiencies. That's just the nature of home inspections, and they're looking for those things that aren't perfect.
Yeah.
Right? And so you don't want your laundry list to be so long that it's overwhelming just because of the length.
Yeah, we want to take care of anything that's been delayed maintenance or anything that needs maintenance now. We want to really take care of that stuff before we even put it on for sale or before the home inspection occurs.
And yet that often doesn't happen. So what I always say to my buyers, so it's switching the hats a little bit here, I say to my buyers, anticipate that you're going to do this year's worth of maintenance after the building inspection. Mm-hmm. Because even when a homeowner's done it, sometimes it's been done perfectly. The majority of the time, there's still some of that deferred or delayed maintenance that is required. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't go back, generally speaking, to negotiate for that unless it was a structural issue, whether it was a safety issue. That would be the other time we might.
Yeah. So they're looking, so the purpose of the home inspection really is to do three things. It's to look for major defects that are going to cost a significant amount of money, or they're going to look for safety defects that could injure somebody. And thirdly, they really give you an education on the house, because if you've got a good home inspector, they're going to walk you through, and when they're looking at the furnace, they're going to go, okay, and this is how you change the air filter, and it should be changed, or every 3 months or every 2 months, every month, depending on the quality of air filter you're using.
And how many people in the house and how many pets.
How much you run it and that kind of thing. And they might also say, well, this type of filter is a washable filter. So you take it out, you hose it off, you dry it, you put it back in. So they're going to educate you on the use of, if it's got a heat exchanger, if it's got air conditioner, how to winterize that, how to turn it off for the winter, where your shutoff valves are for your water, where your main shutoff water valve is, if you've got city water coming in or country water with the well, how to turn the well pump off. Because if you get a major leak, you got to know quickly where to go to get that shutoff valve.
Right.
And so things like that, it's like an education process.
Right.
So really the inspector's looking for major problems.
Correct.
Now, the interesting thing is when they're looking for the major, they're going to find the minor and they're going to note them. But the major typically is anything over $500 to repair or a safety issue. Now, a safety issue could be as simple as a $20 ground fault interrupter plug that's not functioning.
Right.
And so it gets put on the major side, because if you had something plugged into it and it fell into water, it could electrocute you. And that's why that plug was originally there, to protect you. And now it's not functioning. So it's $20 fix. You can do it yourself, or you can have an electrician do it. It's probably a $100 fix if you have an electrician do it. And away you go. And many times if it's a safety issue, we'll ask the seller to look after it, because it's good for them as well, because they're going to live in the house for another 30, 60 days or 90 days, and it's important for their safety as well.
Right. And so what could stop someone? And that was a question I was asked just last night when we were talking about building inspections when I was out. And the person just said, what would stop somebody from buying a home in relation to a building inspection?
Okay. Well, I think when it's got too many surprises that they weren't aware of when they originally negotiated the price on it, and the seller's not willing or able to remedy any of those, or not willing to adjust because of them, that may be a reason to walk away. I've seen houses where we got in and we noticed something very structural in nature that they said, ooh, I really don't want to take this on, and we hadn't noticed it at the showing process, because we're not spending 4 hours in the house really looking at every single detail. We're in there for 15, 20 minutes. And for instance, I sold a house, and this was quite a number of years ago, and the house was not very old and looked beautiful. It was waterfront property, 2-story house, really, really nice house. And when we went to inspection time, the inspector said, there's something going on here, because the teleposts, which is that steel post that holds up the beam, that usually holds up your second and your third floor, or your main floor and your second floor, the posts were angled. So they were kind of leaning in. Some were leaning this way and some were leaning the other way. And we actually had to have an engineer come in and look at it because it was beyond the scope of the home inspector, but he noticed it. And what happens if you have a telepost that's standing vertical, it supports a lot of weight. As soon as it's on an angle, it loses all of its structural strength because it can tip, it can bend, and so it really reduces the strength. And what was found out was the main floor walls that hold up the second story were slightly off on the beam. So they were on the edge of the beam instead of on the center of the beam. That was causing the beam to twist, which caused the posts to bend or to angle. And they were able to fix it by putting another beam across, making it like an H between the two beams, and with bolts pulling those beams back to straightness. But an engineer had to stamp it, had to design it, had to approve it. And as a matter of fact, the nice thing was in that particular case, the builder covered it because it wasn't a very old home. So they came in and did all the repairs for the seller, and my buyer got a good, strong, secure house.
And so that may be a time, though, as a buyer where you might say, yeah, you're going to fix it, and I'm still not comfortable.
Yeah, it's your choice.
It could have gone either way.
That's why we put that clause there.
Right, so we put a clause in that says to the buyer's sole satisfaction. And so during that conditional period, sellers need to just be aware it really is conditional. Because it's even can be used as if I find anything I don't like because I'm just having a hard time with this, buyer's remorse is a typical experience. And if that's too excessive, sometimes people make a decision not to move forward, even though it would have been a great choice to move forward.
Right.
So you don't know.
Yeah, and the important thing to know about the inspection is that two things. It's not a code inspection, although they will say this isn't up to code or this fireplace isn't meeting code or whatever, because that becomes a safety issue.
Right, railings on a deck.
Yeah.
That now all of a sudden they'll throw in the code conversation because if you have a deck X number of inches off the ground, a railing is required, and yet many people love not having the railing because maybe it's only an inch or two higher than it should be, and it's way nicer to look out. So
and the code on railings has changed, how they're built, how secure they are.
And how far apart they are.
Yeah, so it might be it met the code when the house was built or the deck was built, and now the code has changed, so it doesn't meet code.
Right.
But it's not a code inspection, so we can't ask the seller to bring it up to code.
No, we generally wouldn't for something like that. If you want to fix it, fix it. In the older homes, a lot of them have very low railings.
Yeah.
And
they
so even
certainly don't meet code.
They don't meet code. And even the width of the staircase doesn't meet code. And even the rise on the stairs doesn't meet current code.
Yeah. But it's not something you can readily change or easily change.
Right.
Without maybe destroying the character of the house.
Right.
And so you decide if you're going to live with that. You knew it when you bought it.
Right. When you put the offer in. Right.
Yeah. So we're really looking for those surprises. They're going to get in the attic and look at insulation and the roof trusses and that sort of stuff.
And ventilation, because that's a big thing in the attic.
And we can't see that during a regular. So they can get into anywhere where there is a access panel, but it's not a destructive inspection. So if they think maybe there's moisture behind a drywall wall in the basement, they can't remove the drywall to look.
Right.
So it's not that type of inspection.
So you may want, in those cases, you may want an additional environmental inspection. If we see evidence that there may be an issue, you may want to go ahead and spend some additional dollars.
And that's a time where sometimes people walk away as if there's evidence of an oil spill, smell of oil in the basement in the soil if it's an older house, that kind of thing. We got to be really careful with environmental issues because it can be very expensive.
Yeah, and if it's been cleaned up correctly and there's good documentation supporting that it's been cleaned up by an insurance company, then the oil thing is really not a big problem. It just needs to have been addressed. You don't want a current spill.
No, because a few cups of oil on the ground can make
quite an experience, especially today. So it is not what a building inspection is it's not an evaluation of the property from a financial perspective.
Exactly. So they're not going to say, well, you paid $300 for this house and the inspection says really it's only worth $250. What they're saying is, here's the defects or here's the maintenance issues. And now based on what you paid, are you still comfortable with buying this home?
Exactly.
Really.
Yeah, that's really the conversation. And we, as your realtor, will guide you through that process. There's not often that it's necessary to walk away, and yet there are times where I would say, would you please run? Please, and run far.
Because we know if we sell you a house, we're probably going to be the ones reselling it for you in the future, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years.
But that's not the reason we're protecting you.
No.
We are still protecting you because that's what we're hired to do, is protect your best interest.
Yeah.
And yet, we would rather have something that we can sell for you down the road rather than say to you at that time, really? That's just not the right timing. So if you're joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate now, you've missed all the great information about building inspections and what to expect during inspection.
So where can they listen to it?
You can listen to it at chri.ca, and you can watch it there as well, chri.ca on the internet or on the dekkerteam.com website, dekkerteam.com. We have archived shows, I guess close to 130 of them, so just keep watching, and there's all kinds of great topics.
Yeah, and if you're thinking of buying a house, why not put the Dekker Team experience behind you and give us a call. We'd be delighted to help you. 613-860-4663 is the number. That's 613-860-4663. And now we have an opportunity in Castleman.
We do.
I like to call it the Castle in Castleman.
And the reason we call it that is because it's got a couple of turrets.
Yeah, 2 turrets. A lovely home. This is on 1.3 acres, so you've got a country kind of feel, country estate feel.
With the feeling of an estate castle.
Yes.
Right. For
with
only...
the circular driveway.
Exactly. For only... $400,000. So it truly is an amazing oasis. And the other big feature this one has is an in-law suite.
Yes, and it's main floor.
Right. Which is so
like
uncommon.
It's like a wing.
Of the castle.
Wing of the castle. Yep.
Uh-huh.
And now the only thing is there is an approval to put in a full stove. So it has a hot plate and a microwave and a toaster oven kind of thing. This is something that you could rent out. You could probably rent it in the neighborhood of about $1,200 a month. That will help supplement your mortgage on your $400,000 place. Makes this house very, very affordable. Mm-hmm. Or if you've got aging in-laws or
just a reason to have multi-family or multi-generational or more than one family living together, mm-hmm. This property, both inside and outside, give you the space to do that.
Yeah. And then it's got lush shrubbery around it. It's very cute. Cute.
It's not...
Cute usually means small, but it's not small. And then across the street, I believe it's the La Rose Forest, so it's protected forest across the street. So great walking trails and that kind of thing. Great property if you've got a dog or something like that. A bigger dog that needs to run. Mm-hmm. It's just a great property.
Or kids that want to run. Or even if you like to hike.
In the town of Castleman. Yeah. Or just outside the outskirts. And it gives you that quick commute in off the 417.
Right. So we are thrilled that you joined us, and Ken mentioned that if you were looking to buy a home, you would maybe want to enlist the help of the Dekker Team experience. And I'm going to say if you're selling, you would want to do that too.
Well, probably.
Probably. Yeah. So even from a building inspection perspective, there's lots of tips that we can give you to prepare for a great building inspection as a seller, and that we do give you. So it's valuable. This show is great for both buyers and sellers to hear. Mm-hmm. Right.
So thanks for joining us on the Inside Track. And once again, if you want to reach us, 613-860-4663. And if you'd like to send in a question that you would like us to talk about on a future show, you can do that by calling us or by emailing us at info@dekkerteam.com. Would be great. Thank you.
Have a great day.
What you wanna do?